Okay, shalom everybody. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of joy. Okay, and when we talk about joy, we have to understand that there's been a certain misconception that's been stuck into our minds, thanks to our wonderful society, about the concept of joy. And that is misconception number one, at least, is that joy, that our level of joy is a dependent. That is a dependent. Meaning to say that how much joy I have will depend on all the different stuff I received or intake will determine how much joy I have, right? So like, for example, they put in the back of our minds that if only I had that blank, you fill in the blank, then I'll be happy, right? If only I had that girl, then I'd be happy. If only I had that guy, then I'd be happy. If only I had that job, if only I had that six-figure income, if only I had that car, if only I had those looks, if only I had that figure, then, if only I had that life, then I'd be happy. But what happens? Imagine one day you get one of those things. Imagine you get something big. Imagine you win the lottery. So yeah, of course you're going to have a high from that. But even the psychologist will tell you that maximum, that high will last no longer than 6 weeks. Then you come down from that high and you're the same depressed loser you were before, just with more money. And so it comes out then that our level of joy is going to have nothing to do with what we get, nothing to do with what we intake. It's going to have everything to do with what we give forth. And let me be clear. Yes, it does. Yes, you do need to receive a certain amount of food, water, companionship in order to get by. But that's survival. That's not thriving. The real thriving, real joy we're after is going to have nothing to do with what we get, only to do with what we give forth. And by giving forth, I don't mean give $1 to the guy in the street. That's very nice. That's not what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about is real giving of self. To the extent we go ahead and clarify who we really are, what we're really about, what we're really here for, what's reality, what's my place in it, and we make the real moves in order to get there. So it might not be easy, it might not be comfortable, but depressed, if everything else is healthy, you're not going to be, because you're going ahead and living out the inner reality of who you are. And I think in a nutshell we could say, in a one-liner, I think we could say that this is what we mean by joy. That joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are. Right? That joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are. So it's very much like a seed. Right? A seed already includes the story of the tree already in it, but in a state of potential, right? And the quote-unquote yearning of any seed is to grow out into the fullest fruition of what it already is inside, right? And so we see that this is how joy works on all levels, right? Think about it, and in terms of physically, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually. See if we get to that today. This is how joy works. Right, let me give you a simple physical. Let's start the bottom up. We'll start from the bottom. Physical, right? Think about it. When you want to grow into your fullest, physically, take your body's physical potential to its point of actualization. So where do you go? Right? The gym, right? Very good, right? Because what happens in the gym, though, is that at first, it ain't that easy, right? It doesn't look like fun. Right? But once, after whatever amount of time it takes, whether it be a few weeks or a couple of months, once the brain begins to translate the pain into gain, so a person within themselves starts to swell up with a certain feeling of fulfillment, a certain feeling of bringing out their inner potential into expression. And so this is what's going on here, just simply on the physical level. Already we're even beginning to feel a certain level of joy, despite the fact that we didn't even accomplish anything in our life yet, in terms of like practically bringing out my inner potential as a person, but just even physically already we start to feel in this positive way, right? Okay, let's take it up a notch, right? Let's take it to emotionally or psychologically. I'll give you a little example, all right? Imagine you have a good American kid, and so he grows up and he wants to be that Super Bowl quarterback. And so he's dreaming about being that Super Bowl quarterback, right? He's thinking about it all the time. And so and of course he's starting to play. He's in his little league, he's playing football, and he gets to be, he grows up, he gets to high school, he does well there, he gets on the team, he becomes a success as a high school quarterback. Sure enough, they take note of him in the universities, and somebody recruits him to be their star quarterback. He gets drafted by the NFL, and here we catch up with him a few years into his NFL career, and we catch up with him. He's at the Super Bowl. His team is down by 4 with 2 minutes to go, and they have the ball on the 20-yard line. And sure enough, he marches his team down the field, and then with time expiring, he throws that touchdown pass in the end zone. Crowd goes wild. Everyone's excited, right? And they come up to him with the camera and say, hey, you just won the Super Bowl. What are you going to do next? And of course he says, I'm going to Disney World, right? So at that moment, right? Amazing. It's a high, right? Okay, from then on, up until that point, he's been dreaming about being that Super Bowl quarterback. He wins the Super Bowl. From then, for the rest of his life, when he's dreaming, what is he dreaming about? Right? He's dreaming about when he won the Super Bowl, right? He's reminiscing about that time. So think about it. We got to focus in on this moment here, because his entire life is basically one big circle around this moment. Beforehand, he's thinking about, before he wins the Super Bowl, all he's dreaming about is winning the Super Bowl. After he wins the Super Bowl, when he's dreaming, he's reminiscing about the time he won the Super Bowl. So what's really going on for this person at that moment? Right? What's happening when he wins the Super Bowl within him, or within his story? What's really going on for him? Right, this is the moment when his potential is meeting his actualization, right? His journey is meeting the destination. The process is meeting the experience, right? This is what his life is all about, and so this is why he's pumped up about this, right? Let's take this another example to make this point, right? Imagine you have this guy, he sets out on a journey to climb a mountain, and it's like a 4-week climb up this mountain, right? So he starts out, a week into it, here comes his friend in his brand new helicopter flying over, and he sees his buddy climbing the mountain there. So he yells out, he goes, hey buddy, what are you doing? He says, what does it look like I'm doing? Climbing the mountain. Says, what's your goal? Well, my goal is to get to the top of the mountain, right? So he says, oh, if that's your goal, listen, check this out. I got this brand new helicopter, leather interior, AC is blasting. Why don't you hop on in? I'll have you up there in 10 minutes. It looks like you got about 3 weeks left to go. And so, of course, what does the climber say? No, he's not going, right? Why? But why not? If his goal is to get to the top, let him hop in, right? Because really, the climber kind of made a mistake. His goal is not really to get to the top of the mountain. His goal is in every step of the way, right? Matter of fact, fast forward a few weeks down the road, and here he is towards the end of the climb, right? And if this was a movie, they would put in slow motion. They would put this music on in the background. Dun, 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 dun. You have this guy climbing the mountain, right? Last step maybe he takes afterwards. He takes out a flag from his backpack, plants it in there, right? And they'd make a big thing about this moment, right? Why? What is this moment? What's happening then? Right? His potential meeting with the actualization. The journey is meeting the destination. The process is coming in contact with the experience, right? And this is what we want. We want that moment, and that's why they zero in on it in the movie, right? And make it into slow motion with the music and everything, because that moment when he goes over the mountain, that's exactly the moment when the journey met the experience and the destination. And this is what we're all after as people. We want that experience of just getting there, because just getting there is when you're at the destination and you're also still in the journey, right? And that's what we all want. Right? And the question is why we all want that. Hopefully we'll have time to deal with that today. But let's just first take note on this, that this is what we want, because what we are all about at our core is what people are, just like it says in the Jewish Bible that people are compared to trees, and we just explained that what we want is, and what joy is going to be built on is to the extent we go ahead and take from our potential and turn it into actualization. Right? And again, the question is why we work this way. But first, let's look at something else, right? And that is that if we understand what joy is, we should be able to understand what depression is all about, right? If we understand that joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are, then we should also be able to understand that depression is the experience of not actualizing the reality of who you are, right? Meaning to say that if you don't know which direction to go in, or maybe you do know which direction you should go in, and you're running in the other direction, right? Again, another misconception about joy is, right, and you ready? You can fill in the blank for me here, right? If it feels good, right, do it. That's what they say in society, but comes along with an implication, and that is if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. That's right. And so think about it. Imagine you're a good Westerner, you're a good European, you're a good American, and so you have this in the back of your mind, subconsciously, unconsciously, right? If it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. So what happens? Imagine you get 20 minutes of free time falls to you in life. You get 20 minutes of free time. So, as a good American, what do? Right, you plop down into the couch, grab the remote, start flipping the channels, correct? So, at what point, right, let's say you're flipping the channels, you settle in on, I don't know, MTV, okay? So at what point do you start to feel like you want to blow your brains out, right? Okay, so there's different answers, right? Truth is probably the quicker answer, probably the bigger soul, but we don't have to get into that right now, right? But let's take this example to its extreme, right? And that is, right, think about it. When are you even more comfortable than when you're lying in your couch? Right, when you're asleep in your bed, right? And think about it. When are you even more at peace than when you're asleep? Right, when you're dead, right? So let's take note of this. Let's take note of the fact that our society is putting in the back of our minds and into our hearts that the path to joy is to get in touch with the thing that touches the thing that touches death, right? Comfort, sleep, death, right? That's very deep. You said it, not me, right? So that means to say then, right, that, as a matter of fact, actually the Talmud says it already. The Talmud says that sleep is 1/60th of death. So what I'm adding on here is that comfort is 1/60th of sleep, right? And so this explains a lot of the epidemic in our society of depression. Right, again, I'm not talking about someone with serious medical situation. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the mass epidemic in our society of people feeling this inner loss of self, an inner downer, right? That the question that's asked, how can it be that we have it all and everyone feels like garbage, right? How can it be that we've never had it better, right? Which most of us in the Western world, that is the case. Not to mention, obviously you got the smartphones, but just electricity, running water, right? All the gadgets we have, the different modes of transportation we have. We've never had it better, and people aren't happy, right? People are feeling the loss of self, right? Well, think about it, my friends. How many moments in time, it's funny, they call it killing time, right? It's a proper way of putting it. How many moments in time must we kill before we start to feel a little bit dead inside? Right? How many moments in time must we kill before we start to feel like a dead man walking, right? And essentially this is the situation, right? This is the situation our society is in, right? And matter of fact, a lot of us you can feel what I'm saying. A lot of us intuit it at times on our own, right? A lot of times if you know someone who's feeling lethargic, who's feeling down, or is feeling depressed. So a lot of times our gut is even to tell that person, go out for a run, go out for a jog, right? Because already we kind of know, like the issue is an issue of inactivity, of not moving forward. So like just get this guy moving on some level, and hopefully that'll open him up to something more, right? And so this is the idea that joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are. When we understand this, we understand that, okay, so then we want to start building. What it's all about is building forth, right? But let's understand why it is we work this way. Right? Why is it that joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are? Why? And so I want to get a little spiritual with you for a minute, right? And that is we have to understand what the soul is. If we understand what the soul is at its core, we can make sense of why we work this way. Okay? So in a nutshell, I want to do this. Here it goes. Okay? Imagine you have an angel. Okay? Now, we're not going to go into what that means, right? Maybe you can picture something with a circle on its head, wings on its back, whatever you'd like. But for our purposes here, what we mean by an angel is completely spiritual, totally clear on reality, clear on God, clear on its purpose, clear on what it's supposed to do, and therefore has no desire to do anything else, and therefore it always does the right thing. Right? So we can say that the angel is good because it always does the right thing. But think about it, how good is the angel really if it doesn't have any real pull, opportunity, desire to do anything other than good, right? Like, okay, the angel's good. He is good because he always does the right thing. But when is the angel's true inner goodness ever truly able to come out and be manifest and express itself if it never has any pull, opportunity, desire to do anything else, right? So of course the answer would be that it can't, right? The angel can't go ahead and the angel can't express and actualize its inner goodness because it doesn't have any pull, opportunity, desire to do anything other than good, right? So if we can hear that point, then there's a big question, and that is God, right? God, a lot of times we talk about God, ultimate good, right? Totally, right? Clear on what's supposed to be, clear on goodness, defines what is good, right? However, how can we say about God being good, right? Or let's put it this way. Let's put the question the same as the angel, right? Can God's goodness ever truly able to be expressed and manifest if there's never any pull, opportunity, desire for God to do anything other than good, right? So at first glance, we'd have to say like the angel that no, God's goodness is not going to be able to be expressed and manifest because he doesn't have any opportunity, so to speak, to do anything else, right? However, Judaism's answer is that yes, God's goodness can be expressed and manifest. That's what each and every one of us is all about. That each of us are souls, which means an aspect of the infinite, an aspect of the divine, but not clear on our godly essence here in this world where things are not clear, here in this world where there are ups and downs, here in this world where there's a back and forth, where there is a pull, opportunity, desire to do something else. And if we can go ahead and put forth living out our inner essence, living out our soul essence, living out our godly essence, living out goodness, even here in this world where God and good is not all that clear, so we will act as the vehicle for the expression of godness and goodness, even here in this world where God is not all that clear. Right? This is what we mean by a soul. This is what we are at our core. And there's a lot that explains, but one thing it explains is the concept of joy, right? Because again, what we said is that joy is the experience of actualizing the reality of who you are, right? Which means you have an inner potential, an inner essence that's yearning to come out, right? To the extent it goes that we go ahead and live it out in a real, concrete way, right? We act as we go ahead and move from inner potential and essence to outer expression and actualization. And this is what we're doing as souls, right? As souls, our inner core is spiritual, is godly, right? And then what we're all about is living that out, even here in a world that seems like it's not all that godly, right? And so based on this explains from a spiritual perspective why we work in this way, right? And so this is really, I think, in a nutshell, what we mean by joy, right? And explains a lot about ourselves. And so hopefully we can take this and run with it. Hopefully we can take this understanding, and when we're feeling that loss of self, which we all feel from time to time, we all feel a certain discontent with ourselves perhaps from time to time, a little loss of self. So hopefully we can keep this in mind, and we can grab onto and figure out what is it that I want to go ahead and do, whether it be professionally, whether it be physically, whether it be in terms of emotionally or psychologically different things I want to do worldly, right, out there in the world. And then, of course, certainly at the top of the chain, in terms of spiritually, right, growing into the people and the souls that we're supposed to be, right? So to the extent we go ahead and keep this in mind, right, we take this from some theory and we hopefully integrate it in our life in a way that transforms our life, and then ultimately we will be more whole, more complete, more fulfilled, and more happy people.